switch off all microphones, but you are able to switch them on if you want to ask a question. Hello to everyone. I don't know if it's morning or lunchtime or even evening in some countries. Today we have a webinar with Jake Waalk from Japan, who will tell us about how mushroom business in Japan is going on, and especially exotic mushrooms. First, when we start, I want to ask you to be active, to participate and to ask question, where we will have about half an hour, maybe a little bit more if we need. But first, I want to say thank you to our supporters, and say that the webinars like this are only possible with support of from the companies like a moment. Yeah, like Christian's group, and Christian's group is a leader in building and equipping mushroom farms and compost yards. They do it for long time. They work on all the continents, and Christian makes design and construction of mushroom farms and compost yards, climate system, machines, shelving and lorries, modern harvesting and tilting shelf robotics, drawer system solutions for harvesting, and a lot of customized solutions. And we thank you, Christians, for this partnership. We also want to say thank you to Grow Time company. Grow Time is our good partner, who the main product is lorries and trolleys, and they will have short presentation during our webinar. And a company Agro Project.
Maksym, Daniel is present. Daniel is present, and he will represent.
Okay. So Agro Project is a Polish company. They help to design and build mushroom farms and compost yards, and Daniel, the owner and director of Agro Project, is here, so I will not describe a lot of Agro Project. Also, I want to say in the start that we will have shortly courses about mushroom growing in Poland, and also we have a lot of courses on composting and growing mushrooms. So you can find all information on our website. Please check our website for our courses. So let's start with a short introduction of Jake, and then we return a little bit to Grow Time and Agro Project presentations. Jake, hello.
Hello, nice to be here today. Thank you everybody for joining us.
Thanks to you for sharing with us your knowledge about what's going on in Japan. Japan is quite a country that it's quite far from us, and so we know, of course, that exotic mushrooms are very popular there. Describe to us how mushroom market in Japan looks like.
So in Japan, the annual production, not including the standard button mushroom, the Agaricus bisporus mushroom, the production is around 460,000 tons a year, spread out over many varieties. The most popular for the last 30 years or so has been the enoki mushroom, the long needle-like mushroom that grows in the thick clusters. And after that is a mushroom that you don't see much in China or the EU, called the shimeji or buna shimeji, which has a thicker cluster, a thicker stem, kind of similar to a piopino, if you're familiar with those in terms of shape. That's second most popular. And between those two varieties, it's about 250,000 tons of production a year. And then after that, the third most is the shiitake. And then you have other varieties such as the nameko that you see sometimes in Europe, and other varieties like maitake. And of course, the eringi, the king oyster as well. Um, and so in Japan, the heavy influence of the market is for fresh and also wholesale through the restaurant network. Restaurant sales are very important, and fresh market at supermarkets. So the growers in Japan have a lot of very heavy price pressures. So they're growing exotic mushrooms, which in Europe, if you go to Europe, the exotic mushrooms have a high price and a gourmet image, but in Japan, most are quite inexpensive. Some, such as enoki and shimeji, are comparable or cheaper to the button mushroom or the white mushroom in Europe. And so that's the situation. So the growers in Japan have to use a very automated machinery, a very automated system to grow large quantities at an affordable level. So I wanted to, I was happy to talk about that, to share, because I think European market and Europeans especially think that it must be very expensive or difficult to grow exotic mushrooms.
Okay, so let me just again to repeat the numbers you said. The whole production is close to 500,000 tons.
Yes.
Which is plus minus the same as production in United States and half of production in Europe, but mushrooms are different. And the biggest part is enoki, which is how much?
Enoki, about 130,000, 125,000 to 130,000.
130,000 tons of enoki. So a button mushroom somewhere in the bottom of the list, with how much button mushrooms grown in
So yes, in the
Japan?
figure I mentioned the 460,000 tons. It doesn't include the button mushrooms because, sort of an interesting fact, mushrooms in Japan are classified as a forestry product. A forestry product. So, for instance, to relate it to the log, it's filed with logging and other wood-based products in the government, because traditionally you made mushrooms using logs or sawdust even today. So the actual button mushroom, the white mushroom, is filed under agricultural products, but it's not included in that figure. But it's typically quite small, between 8,000 and I want to say 12,000 tons a year nationally. The last figure I looked at, which is a few years old. So it's a very, very small market for that particular variety.
Okay, so champignon is exotic in Japan, actually.
Yes,
but
basically champignon is exotic here.
You have your magazine for 2 years, I guess. And can you describe the aim, the target you organized this magazine, who reads it, and about what you write?
Well, we started off, our main goal was just to there's a lot of misinformation, so we wanted to provide good information and also to showcase our company's expertise as a consultant and as an exporter for these Japanese systems, the equipment and the materials like the filter bags. And so a big part of that was we want to make sure people understand how the systems work, and that we want to have a flagship magazine that shows how many connections we have in the industry here, and how much knowledge we have on the different components that go into exotic mushroom farming. And that's been the main goal, because you go back even 10 years ago, in the US or in the EU, almost nobody had really any idea how these automated systems for growing anything other than white mushrooms, than button mushrooms. Nobody had any idea, because the system, the machinery, is very different. And so we came in and there was an information gap. And so that's where we decided to start this project.
So you have companies that offer some solutions for exotic mushroom growers, and your magazine is a part of promotional or advertisement. marketing part of it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Jake. Jake, we will continue, but first I would like to ask Daniel to switch on microphone and tell a bit about Agro Project Company, our partner and supporter of this and all the rest of webinars and events. Daniel.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Daniel Lejewski, and I'm the co-founder, shareholder, and also the CEO of Agro Projects. I think you guys know us quite a lot. I see, faces which I know from the Polish market and also from abroad. Of course, I see Michał from GrowTime and also Wim from Christians. We just joined this program a couple of weeks ago, just to also be here. We are this Polish company, 9 years of our history, but in the group we have the company Magic, which has 26 years of experience. And we are able to deliver a complete solution for the mushroom growing, starting from the construction or engineering, construction, and also the full range of the equipment for the mushroom farms. We also offer the complete solution for the compost yards. There are some still parts which are missing in our product portfolio to produce by ourselves, but I think we are already known in the world from the projects which we could make really complete. Therefore, what I can say more? We are coming from Poland. Poland is a very big mushroom producer. Strong focus on the export and quality. Therefore, our solutions must be also that way to deliver the very good quality for the growers, and the growers can sell the products very efficiently with some profits.
Thank you very much. Daniel really can recommend the solutions of Agro Projects. It's always very durable and very good and competitive design and solutions. And Michał Kustusz from GrowTime company, good friend of us, the companies that supply very good products. Michał, tell a bit about your products and your offer. Microphone.
Okay. Yeah. Now can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Hello to everyone. My name is Michał Kustusz. I'm a founder of GrowTime company. I would like to tell you to introduce a little bit about the GrowTime. GrowTime specializes in manufacturing durable and efficient picking trolleys and lorries for mushroom farms, electric as well hydraulic ones. Thanks to their solutions and high quality, you can increase the picking efficiency, also the profitability of mushroom farms. We supply our equipment to more than 17 countries around the world. We also offer aluminum shelving, lighting, growing nets, case, and some small equipment. So summarize, everyone who wants to increase the profitability of mushroom farms is more than welcome to contact me.
Thank you very much, Michał. Good. Maybe we will ask Wim Good from Christians to say also a couple of words about Christians.
A couple of words, yes. Can you hear me, by the way? I don't know if our mic is on.
Yeah, I will hear you very well.
Perfect. I didn't know that was also the purpose, but I'm happy to do so, of course. Christians Group, my name is Wim Vught. I represent the Christians Group. Most likely, a lot of people know that, and a lot of times it does not need so much introduction. We are still a leading company in the mushroom business, active on all continents, known for turnkey projects in the mushroom business and the composting. A little bit in waste treatment, but that's only a small part what we do. Mostly we focus on the mushroom business. Beside the turnkey projects, we are also known as a supplier of machinery and products of installations and all kind of smaller parts. So we take up all different requirements needed for any part of mushroom production. We do that for more than 40 years already, have a lot of experience. And as I said, I think we are still the market leader. We focus mainly on white button mushrooms. Now we're in the seminar, of course, for the exotics with Jake. It's an interesting market. We also like to be involved more and more because we see that it is a development all over the world that is becoming more popular. And it's always good to see what's happening everywhere.
Okay, thank you very much, Jim. Thank you very much, all of you who support UMDIS on our activities. And Jake, let's continue with Japanese market. So we already established that button mushrooms in somewhere in the bottom of the list, and the most important mushrooms for your market is enoki, shimeji, shiitake, and what else?
After shiitake, you would probably be maitake is in the 4th place, and then in 5th place you would get nameko, and then at 6th place it's usually you see the wood ear mushroom, the auricularia, which is usually sold dried, also very common mushroom in China. So those are the 6 main in Japan. Oh, and I should say, sorry, before nameko you would get erengi. Erengi would be 5th. And so it's a diverse market. So you have a market in Japan that's not all based on one species. And so that means a lot of the machinery and a lot of the materials you use for growers, there's a good deal of diversity, and there are many different makers. So you'll find situations as well where you want a piece of machinery, but this machinery is, for a person, for instance, if you want to grow the shimeji by bottle, but there's a specialized maker that handles that kind of machinery. So it's not I think as like the button mushroom industry. There's a lot of consolidation, and people use the very similar systems now. Even new farms in America or new farms elsewhere, they are all using, I think, very similar system. And I think from the work of Christians too has really standardized many of the Dutch systems, or at least parts of the Dutch system abroad. But in the exotic markets, you see there's a lot of difference in Japan. And then if you go to China, China also has just very different settings. So there's not as much, how do you say, it doesn't match up as well as with other industries.
Can you tell about history of the growing those mushrooms in terms of technology? How it was 50 years ago and how it changed through years?
So for hundreds of years, it's basically inoculating logs through a mixture of originally luck. Then about maybe 150 years ago, they started to figure out how to actually inoculate wild logs, especially for shiitake. And then after that, you get into the 1930s, and around the 1930s, you start to see development of the bottle system, which surprises many people because the bottle system looks much more high-tech than the bags system. The bags seem kind of simplistic, but the bottle system is begins earlier. And so the 30s, that's being developed in a research level. And then when you hit about the 1950s, after the Second World War, you see an explosion in the development, and a lot of the technological capacities were there. So what happened in the 50s was the Japanese government subsidized the development of the industry as a rural development project, especially for areas of the country with a lot of snow, which is where I'm from, Nagano Prefecture, and in the mountains. North of there is a very snowy region, and so that's why that area became a big mushroom producer, because they had a short growing system, and it was difficult for farmers to find work outside of the growing season. And that kind of led to today. So the bottle system comes in the 50s, and it's moving, and by about the 1970s, you start to see really large scale production of enoki, hundreds of farms, and they begin to use the air-conditioned facilities. So previously they did not use the air-conditioned facilities. That starts in the 70s when they start doing it year-round, because some farmers found, hey, growing enoki makes way more money than growing rice. We're going to grow enoki all year long. And that's how that happened. And then it just takes off from there. And you begin to see the bags coming in the 80s, the early 1980s. They began cultivating the shiitake with the bags that have the filter attached. And that also kind of explodes. And today you have the shiitake, and then you still see the maitake. And then a lot of farms in Japan recently have begun growing wood ear, which they used to import, and they still import, I think, 90% of wood ear mushrooms from China. But the quality control issues and some issues with heavy metal content and food safety testing have given a market for more expensive domestic wood ear mushrooms. So the prices are good. So many farmers are going to grow wood ear, moving in because they get a better price. And so the percentage of Chinese imports is dropping from I think 99% down to about 93%. And I think it'll keep dropping in the next few years. And that's also done with the filter bags.
Can you explain about those numbers from imports from China from 99?
So the consumption. So in Japan, traditionally very few wood ear mushrooms grown. It's and the development of the cultivation. So the wood ear mushroom is more popular in China than in Japan. So it is more historically Chinese mushroom. And so most of it is imported from China. I think when I saw it in 2012, it was about 99% imported. And then they began to have they see some of the issues with the quality control there, and also just the desire to build up a new sector of their own industry here. And so that's been going down quite quickly. And we'll see how things go from there. That's a very interesting side of the market. So you have these two competing systems, and I hope I'm not confusing people. So you have a system with a plastic bag that has a filter attached, which is a one-use bag, basically. When you incubate that block, you throw the bag away, or you throw the bag away at the end of the cycle with maitake. Or with the bottles, though, you can reuse them for up to 10 years. You sometimes have to replace the caps or the filters inside the caps, but you can continue to reuse the bottles for up to 10 years. And so the differences are, I say the main trade-off you see with bottles, you can fully automate everything. So most things that can be grown in the bottles are now grown with the bottles. So the only exception would be the shiitake and the maitake, which is because you get the poor bioefficiency with a bottle. Whatever you do with a shiitake, if you grow a shiitake in a bottle, you get a single shiitake for this whole bottle, and you don't make your money back. And similarly for maitake, you get a small little maitake in the bottle, so you don't get your money back really, or just barely. So those are mostly grown with bags. But at this point, most other varieties, they grow with these completely automated systems, almost completely automated systems that use these bottles.
Jake, tell me, please, if Japan exports a lot of enoki or shimeji or those mushrooms that can be grown in bottles.
Yes, sorry, my explanation's long, but sorry, as far as I know, the Japanese consumption is very much built around the domestic market, which is partially why prices are very low, because there's an oversupply here. And there hasn't been a lot of export from Japan. So the export market is very much dominated by Korea and by China. If you were to say anyone exporting, it would be Hokuto. Hokuto exports or sets up factories to grow their iringi in the US and in Europe and in Australia. But they're the only ones that I know of them. And sometimes Yukiguni Maitake has been somewhat trying to export the maitake a bit. I don't know how successful they have been.
Good. Maybe someone have a question to Jake. Please switch on your microphone and ask if you want. Okay. Then write down your question and ask later. Let's move on. And with prices on those exotic mushrooms, can you tell us some levels of prices?
Yes. So if you're, I'm going to loosely translate from yen to euros. But so if you go to enoki, the wholesale price is roughly, €1.20 for a kilogram. So very, 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 very cheap for enoki. And when you get to shimeji, it's a little better, but you're still only looking at, between €2 and €2.50 during the low point, during the summer season when price is lowest. And even for things like the shiitake, you're seeing the average yearly wholesale prices is around 900 yen, around there, 900 yen in the last few years. And just trying to put that into euros, it comes down to under €5 a kilo for the shiitake even. And so across the board, the prices are quite cheap. So these are sort of everyday foods that people use for everyday cooking, not so much a special or unique food.
And those prices you mentioned is this farm gate price or it's retail price?
So these prices I just mentioned are wholesale prices, so
Wholesale.
by kilo. I could give example if I had to go to supermarket near me, it would usually be for a 100-gram pack of shiitake. It would be, 180, 170 yen with the supermarket markup. So, 80 cents or 70 cents, euro cents for about a 100 to 110 gram pack of shiitake, for instance. Or if I want to get enoki, they sell a whole cluster, so roughly 280 grams. And I get that at the supermarket for, maybe, 130 yen, so 50 or 60 euro cents. So very, very cheap.
Okay. Tell me, please, about level of automation on a big modern farm you achieved. I mean, how many people needed to produce some amount of mushrooms in bottles?
So, example with enoki, I've been to a large farm that I got to write about. They grow 6,000 tons a year in this farm. And so if you don't count the packaging for supermarkets and shipping, and you just look at how many people they need for growing, it's only about 30 people for the entire growing department for everything. Maybe not even 30 people.
So including harvesting is like robots or automation.
So I work the harvest line in that factory. The only place that they haven't automated the harvest is before it goes into the machine to harvest it. The enoki, as you saw in the presentation, or you may have seen before, they have these blue collars around the cap, around the lid, I should say. And the blue collars are there to make sure the enoki form a nice cluster and that they grow long and tall. And so before you harvest the enoki, you have to remove that cap, and that is done by hand. But I've seen, so yeah, there's a picture of the caps.
This one, yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen often Vietnamese trainees or Vietnamese guest workers who do it, and it's just super fast. So they have the factory that I'm talking about. They have 2 workers that work the line, and they are there just to remove the caps. And everything else of the harvest is automated. So you just need the workers to remove the collars of the blue collars around them, and after that, the machine does the harvesting, and then it's just a matter of packaging, which in Japan, you know, they also includes, you know, if you have to have 100 grams, you know, you have to weigh and then you have to put in the packaging line, and that's a different story.
What is main raw material for enoki
So
shimeji?
yeah, enoki and shimeji both, the main raw material is corn cob. That after the kernels of corn have been processed, the leftover waste product, the corn cob itself, is a good source of lignocellulose, and that's used as a base, very different percentages. And then on top of that, they use nutritional supplements. Usually in Japan, that's going to be wheat bran, rice bran, and then for shimeji especially, they use it's a soy pulp from the production of tofu. When you make tofu, there's the shells and other elements of the soybeans are left. There's a soy pulp, and that's dried and used in mushroom production as well. So very inexpensive agricultural waste products go into shimeji and into enoki, which is why the price is low. And you see here as a room, the collars are there. The collars have to be put on by hand. And this is a challenging task if you're not used to it, to do it quickly enough. And so, yeah, various pictures here, if there's any questions you have about the pictures.
Good. So
I have a question, actually.
yeah.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Can you probably define what is considered a small, medium, and large mushroom farm in Japan?
So in the case of a bottle factory, I would definitely say a small farm on the bottle factory is between 1 to 300 tons a year. And then a mid-size, you'd probably be looking at places that are growing between, you know, it tends to even out about 750 to 1,500 tons. And then generally anything over 1,500 tons, we would say that's a large factory. When you look at shiitake, growing shiitake in the bags, you know, you say a small factory is a place that's growing maybe 30, 40 tons a year. Mid-size is going to be about 200 to 300. And over 300 is generally, we say, a large factory for that variety of mushroom.
And how many farms now operate in Japan?
I don't know the exact numbers. There's still a lot of small part-time farmers, or like small family farms still exist. But overall, the numbers have been falling, but there's still several thousand altogether.
Tell me, yeah, Wim, switch on microphone. Wim, we don't hear you.
Hello, sorry that
Yeah.
I'm late. I'm John Verbrugge from the Netherlands, and I was also interested in the mushroom business in Japan.
Hello, John. Congratulations with recent news. I hope it will give you a lot of new opportunities.
Yes, I think so. Now, yeah, we belong to a bigger organization, and we like to expand exotic mushrooms in Europe.
Yes, it's still an open market. So, sorry, Wim, you had the question?
I have a little question. You told me that the use of the plastic bags, that's a one-way system?
Yes, it's a one-time use, unfortunately.
Yeah, but the plastic bottles, I think it's most plastic, eh? Do they also need to be sterilized after every time that you use them?
So you sterilize after the substrate is filled. So you have a filling machine that's filling the substrate in each bottle, various settings. Then you autoclave it. And so the autoclaving, it sterilizes everything. So after you finish the harvest, yeah, they use an air. Nowadays it's usually an air compressor, and then that removes the substrate, and then you just fill it up. You do the filling because it'll be sterilized in the autoclave.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
So that it's heat-resistant plastic. Typically, a PE mix in Japan usually heat resists enough to 118 degrees Celsius.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Maksym, did you have a?
Yeah,
I have one
my
more.
luck. Yeah, I'm
Sorry.
actually
I
okay.
have one more.
Dimitros,
Thank you.
go.
You discussed before the level of automation. How, as far as the small farms, I would say, is concerned, automation, digitization, is it a major issue or?
Well, you have a lot of small farms that are technologically obsolete, and their owners are also mostly older. I think you see similar thing in Europe. These farms, when that person retires, they'll probably quit. It's a small family business, and once they're done, it'll probably just be unexistent. But there are basically two kind of solutions in Japan. One is the incubation center model, which to make easy to understand, I think you can look at CNC or the Dutch substrate providers, where you don't have to have all the machinery to make your substrate. You just place an order and it's delivered to you. And with that way, small farms don't need to do this expensive automation, but they can still purchase affordable substrate. And the other is there are some small farms that do maybe semi-automatic, or that basically try to manage their systems as efficiently as they can while working maybe a smaller market. So for instance, selling more direct sales, selling into more local networks where they can make a higher price than large companies that end up selling to supermarkets or to wholesalers that will set a very low price. And so those are the two ways that basically farms have to compete with the efficiency and the price level in Japan.
And in terms of environmental control, the small farms, do they have any system in place or?
Well, there's relatively little in terms of objects of environmental concern with exotic mushroom farming. Like for one, in Japan, it's been illegal for more than 40 years in Japan to use any pesticide, any fungicide, any chemical whatsoever. Is insecticide as well is completely banned. You can't use any chemicals around mushroom farms in Japan. And so because you're also just using a sawdust and composted sawdust or corn cob, these composted agricultural waste products, the water used is not particularly high in nitrogen content. It doesn't have to be treated or held over as goody water. So there's relatively little environmental waste. And in Japan, I say in some degree, it might be less strict than in Europe. But as far as I know, there's not any particular requirements that farms have to follow because it doesn't produce waste. Most farms, even small farms, they finish, they throw their substrate, they have their substrate, they put it in a truck and they give it to the neighbors to use in the fields as a soil amendment, and that's how it ends.
You refer to the byproduct or the bio waste generated by mushroom production, isn't it?
So the bio waste, the spent substrate, the spent mushroom compost.
Substrate. Yeah, the compost.
But the water as well does not have to be treated, is what I was trying to say.
Okay, yeah. And what about the conditions during the cultivation process? Are they monitored? Or?
Yes. Even a small farm, you'd really need to have at least a monitor for humidity and temperature. And most farms these days at least have some form of humidifier. And of course, if you're growing year round, except in places maybe where you have a good climate, you need some kind of climate control system. Even if it's just a greenhouse, you need something for the climate.
Jake, thank you. Jake, tell me please, if someone in Japan use not sterile but semi-sterile or some pasteurized substrate for growing exotic mushrooms?
Almost no one in Japan, and the reasons are straightforward. The results are kind of underwhelming, and you have a higher contamination rate, higher failure rate with how the Japanese system works. So almost no one. Everybody uses the pressurized autoclaves here. And sort of applying that system to Europe has been my company's greatest challenge, especially given the relatively strict standards in CE. And I think the relatively strict standards for autoclaves in Europe. These, like I said, they are very safe equipment. I've never heard of a single incident in any Japanese mushroom farm with the autoclave. But in Europe, using that kind of autoclave system is almost impossible to get certified insurance-wise without doing some very costly adjustments.
Thank you. And spawn, mycelium.
Yes.
Do everyone produce it by themselves, or how market works for spawn?
Well, very large makers will make their own spawn. Yukiguni and Hokuto are both large enough. They maintain, research, and produce their own spawn. Other large makers, they might make spawn in their facility, but they license out the actual strain to research to a company that's, doing the breeding and the research, but they will make the spawn at their company. But then I'd say most companies in Japan, other than the very largest ones, are buying spawn. So there are a number of spawn makers here still. The main difference with the spawn here, it's made with sawdust. It's the standard for these varieties. Sawdust spawn, which you don't have in Europe. And there's a very high degree of quality. And each breeder, for instance, the price is expensive. The price is going to be about 3 or 4 times what you're used to paying to buy a spawn in Europe for exotic mushrooms. But when you buy it, the maker sends you a guarantee. If something goes wrong and you followed their instructions, they refund you. And they send you those instructions. So the maker will tell you exactly what to do to get an ideal yield with this strain, essentially. And so there's a lot more security, but a higher cost. So it's a very Japanese mindset. They'll pay more, but it's easier to handle, and you get to more peace of mind, basically.
It's a good mindset, especially for spawn producers.
Yeah.
Jake, can you? I have a question. The raw materials, are they all local, and are they stable from quality, or do they import them in Japan?
So I'd say the rice bran is local, and the soy pulp is locally produced, but much of the soybeans are probably imported. The corn cob is imported from Southeast Asia, mainly I would say Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia. And then the wheat bran, again, is processed in Japan at bakeries, bread producers, and millers. But most of the wheat is also probably imported from either Canada, the US, or from Australia. So I'd say you're looking at the sawdust, of course, is local. But for things that don't use sawdust, you're looking at a substrate that's mostly imported, unfortunately. It's just that Japan doesn't have this huge level of scale for, it's a mountainous country that most of the agriculture done in very small scale blocks, and the primary crops are rice and soybeans, and then some other crops like that. So you don't have a lot of wheat, and you don't have a lot of corn. So those are imported.
Yeah, and another question: do they look to life cycle analysis and CO2 footprint, the Japanese supermarkets, that it is a local and not too high CO2 pollution, the full cycle?
Also, in Japan, there's no labeling or no concern right now with the food cycle and the CO2 emissions per product. I would say in terms of looking at CO2 emissions from agriculture and food production and general environmentally aware consumers, the country is quite far behind, maybe 20 years behind what you see in Europe. But I would say when you're looking at the exotic mushroom farms, you're looking at something that's relatively low emission, because especially in terms of what your inputs are compared to what CO2 is produced. But they are not measuring that here.
Yeah, and I think they have high bioefficiency, and then automatically your CO2 footprint is low, I think. And
yeah, and they're doing shiitake, for instance. They're doing 3 flushes for the shiitake, because and so that means you're using the same block and you flush it 3 times. So they're getting about a kilo. For each 2.5. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So, Jake, what is the cycle time then for shiitake? How long are they in growing, and what is the average yield and bioefficiency?
So shiitake in Japan, it's a longer cycle than what a lot of people use in America. I'm not as familiar. In Europe, it's quite, the standards are quite all over the place. But in Japan, usually between a 90 and 100-day incubation, which you have the two parts, the first half, the incubation, and the browning. And then after that, the fruiting typically happens. The first harvest is within about 20 days of shock after the incubation ends. And then there's a cycle of rest, and then fruiting, and then rest, fruiting. And overall, it ends up lasting about 180 days. So roughly 6 months, most farms, before the block is thrown away.
Yeah, that's in between. We are now, 1 year, we are doing tests with shiitake substrate and tunnels. And then we have 6-7 weeks, 60, we have this incubation time. And in 2 weeks, average yield 22 to 28%.
So, and the yield, if I may give you the yield, then over the 3 flushes in Japan, the standard size is a 2.5 kilogram block, artificial block, and over the course of the 3 flushes, it's about 900 grams to 1 kilo, and of course, there you're soaking with water midway. So you're getting some water content back into the substrate, but you're still getting that level of bioefficiency from it.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you very much, Jake. Andrei, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Jake, I have a little bit different question. I'm here from Ukraine. Hello, you from Ukraine. And see the region which called Hutsulan region. And it is very familiar to Japan, for traditional Japan, which I see from the specialized video. So I see that it is possible to invite the technologies, the traditional log technology here as a family business in this region. It's very good for mushrooms. What would be your advice to search for the partner in Japan for such kind of a project? Thank you.
Well, we work on those projects as well. You could contact me. There's some larger companies you could contact, but especially if it's a smaller project, or a project with risks. For instance, risks associated with the war situation, it might be difficult to move with a large company. But I would love to hear more about it, and you could talk to me, and we could discuss some ideas, because I definitely would like to see it. And in your case, I think it works best if you have maybe a group of farmers, which is how it was often in Japan, who come together, and you make a very modern facility for the filling and the incubation. And so then everyone receives the blocks, sort of like a substrate producer, but it's like a co-op. So it's basically a co-op substrate producer. I think that is the safest way for a new region to develop without anybody having to invest too much of their money. But we can talk about that with Mail, because I definitely think if you have a good region and a good climate, it's a very interesting business.
Okay, thank you very much, Jake. I think it was a very interesting webinar. I will give you an opportunity, moment.
Great, thanks.
Again, I want to say thank you to our sponsors, Christian's Grow Time and Agro Project companies that supports this event. Let's finalize this webinar with last questions from Dimitros. Wait for
Great, thank you. I'm wondering if there is any traceability tracking system in Japan to track, we have several inputs, production of spawn, of substrate, of mushrooms, and so on. Is that something to be considered?
So could I just ask, what do you mean? Do you mean track the efficiency?
Traceability system in Japan. If you can track inputs, raw materials, during the whole life cycle of the production, I would say, in Japan?
I'd say each farm has that knowledge. Each farm is aware of exactly how much their inputs are and how much their outputs. But I'd say there's not like a central database to look at that industry-wide. I can see the harvest. I can see how much is harvested, but it's a bit more tricky there's no simple data out there that I can look and see how much sawdust is made from mushrooms or how much corn cob is imported. And a lot of the times it might be difficult to even determine what, yeah.
And is the situation the same if you compare smaller farms, bigger farms?
Well, I'd say everybody is operating the same level of efficiency because like I said, the prices are very cheap. It's not an easy market for you to survive in if you can't produce efficiently here.
Great, thanks.
And I wanted to thank everybody before we end. I wanted to thank everybody for joining and listening and also for asking questions. It's always the worst situation when it's just dead silence or you talking to yourself the whole time. And I know most of you work with the Agaricus bisporus, but I am very happy to be the interest and respect being brought into exotic mushroom consultants and equipment and acknowledgement of the growing interest in the market. And I hope to play my own part in continuing to develop that sector in Europe. And hopefully there'll be some opportunity for me to work with some of the faces in this group in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cenk. Absolutely. But before we go, I would like to share, to show you our trailer of our courses and invite all of you to our courses that will be soon in Poland, growing courses. I don't know if you see it. Let's go.
Yep.
We all miss a little bit Ukrainian. Oh, sorry. What I hear now? Sorry, a moment. Oops. Nice. I say that I really miss our conferences. Hopefully soon we will have opportunity to have next one. But we have constant. We are holding courses in different countries. We just recently we finished last one in Ireland for harvesting. Before this in Ukraine, before this in Poland, and soon we're gonna have a next one in Poland. So I invite you to be our ambassadors and ask everyone to come to our courses. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jake, for very interesting information. Send us your request about what you want to hear next time. And thank you very much, Ina, for helping with the organization of this webinar. See you next time.
Many thanks. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
you, Jake. Thank you. That was very interesting.
Thank you.